Judge Judy had seen people fake tears, twist facts, and walk into her courtroom believing confidence could erase the truth. But on that cold Monday morning, it wasn't a stack of legal documents that froze the room. It was a little girl's worn backpack, carefully placed on the plaintiff's table beside a cracked house key tied to a faded pink ribbon. Then the defendant laughed. Karen Whitmore leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and smirked at the woman sitting across from her. "She's homeless because she makes bad choices," Karen said loudly. "That's not my problem." The words echoed through the courtroom like broken glass. The gallery fell silent. Even the bailiff's expression hardened. The young mother didn't respond. She simply lowered her eyes and gently rested one hand on the backpack, as though protecting the last piece of her daughter's world. Judge Judy didn't interrupt. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even blink. She simply looked at Karen for a long moment, a silence so controlled that it became heavier than any argument. Experienced judges understand something most people never notice. Arrogance almost always arrives before exposure. The louder someone celebrates their innocence, the less prepared they are for the truth, waiting quietly inside a folder. And Judge Judy already had one. Pay close attention to what happened next, because this wasn't just another dispute over money. Before the day was over, one forgotten document and one heartbreaking object would completely destroy the story Karen had spent months telling everyone around her. Before this story goes any deeper, make sure you're subscribed for more unforgettable courtroom stories like this. If you're new here, subscribe now, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust us. This case is about to take a turn no one inside that courtroom expected. At first glance, the lawsuit appeared almost ordinary. Karen Whitmore claimed she had every legal right to remove the plaintiff from one of her rental properties after several months of unpaid rent. According to her filing, she had shown nothing but patience. She insisted she had followed every rule, every deadline, and every legal notice. On paper, it looked like another landlord-tenant disagreement. But courtrooms are rarely changed by paperwork alone. They're changed by details. Judge Judy slowly opened the case file in front of her, but instead of looking at the eviction notice first, her attention drifted toward the small backpack resting beside the plaintiff. It wasn't expensive. The fabric had been stitched together several times by hand. One zipper had been replaced with a safety pin. A tiny stuffed rabbit peeked from one side pocket. Judge Judy had presided over thousands of cases, and she had learned that objects often tell stories long before people do. Truth does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives folded inside something everyone else overlooks. The plaintiff finally stood. Her name was Emily Carter. She was 29 years old, visibly exhausted, and dressed in a clean but worn navy sweater that looked several years old. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes, yet she stood with quiet dignity instead of desperation. She wasn't asking the courtroom for pity. She was asking for someone to finally listen. Karen rolled her eyes before Emily could even speak. "Oh, please," Karen muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Here comes another performance." Judge Judy slowly turned toward her. "Mrs. Whitmore." Karen immediately stopped talking. "You'll have your opportunity," Judge Judy said calmly. "Nothing more. Nothing less. Sometimes authority doesn't need volume. It only needs certainty." Emily took a slow breath. "My daughter and I lost our apartment 3 months ago," she began quietly, "but that's not why I'm here." The courtroom remained perfectly still. "I'm here because Ms. Whitmore told every shelter, every property manager, and even my employer that I destroyed her property and abandoned the lease." Karen smiled confidently. "As far as I'm concerned," she replied. "That's exactly what happened." Judge Judy didn't respond. Instead, she picked up a single sealed envelope from inside the case folder. She looked at it for only a second before placing it back on the bench. Karen never noticed, but the bailiff did. And so did the viewers sitting in the gallery. Whatever was inside that envelope had already changed the direction of the case before anyone had spoken under oath. Karen believed she controlled the story. She had no idea she was only moments away from walking directly into the question that would begin unraveling everything she believed was safely buried. Emily Carter did not look like someone trying to win sympathy. She looked like someone who had spent too many nights convincing her 6-year-old daughter that tomorrow would somehow be better. The courtroom couldn't see every chapter of her story yet. Judge Judy suspected there were many. Emily carefully unzipped the faded backpack and removed a thin folder held together by a rubber band. Inside were neatly organized receipts, handwritten notes, copies of job applications, and a stack of school attendance records. Every page had been protected inside inexpensive plastic sleeves. People who fabricate stories usually bring excuses. People who survive hardship bring records. Judge Judy noticed how Emily kept smoothing the edges of each paper before handing it to the bailiff. That wasn't nervousness. It was respect for the truth, for the court, and for the hope that someone would finally believe her. "Tell me about your situation," Judge Judy said. Emily nodded. "I worked full-time as a nursing assistant for nearly 6 years. After my husband passed away from a sudden heart condition, it was just my daughter Lily and me." The room became noticeably quieter. "I never missed rent until last winter." Karen immediately scoffed. "Here we go," she whispered. Judge Judy lifted one finger without taking her eyes off Emily. The interruption ended before it began. Emily continued. "My daughter became seriously ill with pneumonia. I had to miss several weeks of work to stay with her in the hospital. My employer reduced my hours afterward because they needed someone with a more consistent schedule." She paused only long enough to steady her breathing. "I fell behind by 1 month. Not 3 months, not a year. 1 month." The narrator could almost feel the atmosphere shift. Small details matter in court because they expose the difference between failure and misfortune. Emily explained that she immediately contacted Karen, asking for a temporary payment arrangement while she picked up additional shifts. She even showed printed emails proposing weekly partial payments. Karen had rejected everyone. Instead, according to Emily, the notices became increasingly aggressive. Then something happened that wasn't written anywhere in the eviction paperwork. "My daughter came home from school crying," Emily said softly. Judge Judy leaned forward. "Why?" Emily reached into the backpack again and carefully unfolded a piece of construction paper. It was a child's drawing, a small apartment, a mother holding a little girl's hand. Both were standing outside beneath dark clouds, while another woman locked the front door. Written in oversized pencil letters across the top were the words, "I wish we could go home." The gallery fell completely silent. No one spoke. Even Karen stopped smiling for a brief moment. Judge Judy studied the drawing far longer than anyone expected. Cases often arrive disguised as financial disputes. But sometimes they are really about dignity wearing the mask of unpaid rent. Emily's voice remained steady. "My daughter overheard people at the shelter saying we were homeless because I destroyed someone's property." She swallowed hard. She started believing it. The little drawing suddenly became much heavier than paper. It became proof of what humiliation can do to a child. Karen quickly recovered her confidence. "Children imagine things," she said dismissively. "That proves absolutely nothing." Judge Judy slowly placed the drawing beside the sealed envelope she had examined earlier. She said nothing. Silence has a purpose in experienced courtrooms. It gives careless people room to reveal themselves. Karen accepted the invitation. "I own several rental properties," she continued proudly. "I've dealt with tenants like her before. They stop paying, invent emotional stories, and expect landlords to become charities." She glanced toward Emily with open contempt. "She's very good at making herself look like the victim." Judge Judy watched Karen instead of listening only to her words. There was no anger, no frustration, no curiosity about Emily's evidence, only certainty. Experienced judges recognize another pattern. When someone attacks character before addressing facts, they are often trying to move the courtroom away from the evidence. Emily quietly reached for one final document. "This is my payment ledger," she said. "It shows every rent payment I ever made before my husband died." Judge Judy accepted it without comment. Every payment had arrived on time, month after month, year after year. Karen's claim that Emily had always been irresponsible suddenly became much harder to believe. For the first time that morning, Karen shifted uneasily in her chair. It was subtle, barely noticeable. But Judge Judy saw it immediately. The first crack in confidence is rarely dramatic. It usually appears as a movement someone hopes nobody noticed. Across the courtroom, the sealed envelope still rested unopened on the judge's bench. Karen kept looking at Emily. She never looked at the envelope. She had no idea that whatever was inside it wasn't meant to prove Emily's hardship. It was meant to expose Karen's. The confidence Karen Whitmore carried into that courtroom had not been built overnight. It had been reinforced over years of getting exactly what she wanted. She owned several rental properties across the county, proudly describing herself as a self-made businesswoman who refused to let emotions interfere with business. Online reviews painted two very different pictures. Some praised her efficiency. Others quietly warned about her intimidating behavior, sudden eviction threats, and habit of making struggling tenants feel like they had already lost before any disagreement even reached a courtroom. Judge Judy had seen people like Karen before, not because of their wealth, because of their certainty. There is a particular kind of confidence that doesn't come from being right. It comes from believing no one will ever question you. As Karen adjusted the sleeve of her expensive blazer, she glanced toward the gallery with the relaxed smile of someone who expected to leave victorious. She believed Emily Carter was exactly the kind of person she had dealt with dozens of times. A struggling single mother, a weak opponent, an easy target. What Karen failed to realize was that Judge Judy had stopped judging this case by appearances nearly 3 decades earlier. People who exploit hardship often mistake silence for agreement. In reality, silence is where experienced judges begin paying the closest attention. Karen finally stood to give her side. "I've worked hard for everything I own," she began confidently. "Every tenant signs the same lease. Every tenant knows the rules. If I make exceptions for one person, I have to make them for everyone." Her voice was polished, practiced, almost rehearsed. She turned toward Emily without even trying to hide her contempt. "She wants this courtroom to believe she's some innocent victim. But she stopped paying rent, ignored deadlines, and expected me to feel sorry for her." Emily remained completely still. She didn't interrupt. She didn't react. Judge Judy noticed that too. Innocent people often spend more energy listening than performing, Karen continued. "She keeps talking about her daughter because she knows it makes people emotional." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Emily lowered her eyes. The little girl's drawing still rested beside the judge. Karen didn't even acknowledge it. That omission spoke louder than any denial. When someone cannot challenge the facts, they often try to discredit the person presenting them. It wasn't a legal argument. It was a psychological strategy. Karen wanted everyone to stop seeing Emily as a mother. She wanted them to see her as an excuse. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Ms. Whitmore," she asked calmly, "did Ms. Carter contact you before she fell behind on rent?" Karen answered immediately. "No." Emily quietly looked down at the printed emails already sitting in evidence. Judge Judy noticed Karen did not. The judge made no comment. She simply wrote one short note on her legal pad. Karen mistook the silence for approval. She smiled. That smile would become one of the biggest mistakes of her life. Feeling increasingly comfortable, Karen decided to go further. "You know, Judge," she said with a shrug. "People like her always have a story. Sick child, dead husband, lost job. It's always something." The courtroom seemed to stop breathing. Emily's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. The bailiff looked toward Judge Judy. Even Karen's own attorney slowly closed his eyes. He understood what Karen did not. Some sentences don't just offend people. They expose character. Judge Judy didn't interrupt. She simply allowed the silence to settle over every person in the room. Then she asked one quiet question. People like her? Karen laughed lightly. You know exactly what I mean. Judge Judy never smiled. No, she replied evenly. I'd like you to explain it. For the first time that morning, Karen hesitated. Only for a second. But it was enough, because confidence disappears long before words do. Karen searched for another explanation. I mean, tenants who refuse to take responsibility. Judge Judy made another note. She looked toward the sealed envelope one more time, then toward the child's drawing. Finally, she returned her attention to Karen. The judge had now heard exactly what she needed. Karen thought she had strengthened her case. Instead, she had revealed something much more important than a contract dispute. She had revealed how she viewed the people whose lives she controlled. Judge Judy slowly reached for the sealed envelope. The courtroom watched her hand move toward it. Karen's attorney suddenly leaned forward. His face had lost all color. Whatever was inside that envelope, he had just realized it could destroy everything. The courtroom was so quiet that the faint rustle of the sealed envelope sounded louder than anyone expected. Judge Judy rested one hand on it but didn't open it. Not yet. Timing had always been one of her greatest tools. Evidence revealed too early explains a story. Evidence revealed at the right moment exposes a lie. Karen, convinced she had regained control, folded her arms with another confident smile. Judge, I think we've wasted enough time on emotional stories, she said. The lease is clear. She broke it. That's the end of it. Judge Judy looked at her without expression. No, she replied calmly. The lease isn't the only thing we're discussing anymore. Karen's smile faded just enough for the gallery to notice. The judge picked up Emily's payment ledger one last time. For nearly 4 years, Judge Judy said, every payment arrived on time. She flipped another page, not one bounced check. Another page, not one late payment. Then she looked directly at Karen. So tell me something. Karen straightened in her chair. If Miss Carter had been such an irresponsible tenant all along, Judge Judy paused. Why did you renew her lease twice? The courtroom froze. Karen blinked. She looked toward her attorney. Well, business was different back then. Judge Judy didn't interrupt. When exactly did she become the irresponsible tenant you described? Karen hesitated. After she stopped paying. Judge Judy nodded slowly. So before she experienced financial hardship, you trusted her enough to continue renting your property. Karen swallowed. I suppose. The judge made another note. Experienced judges know that the most effective questions are often the simplest. Liars prepare speeches. They rarely prepare for straightforward facts. Karen shifted uncomfortably. It doesn't matter, she insisted. She still owed rent. It matters, Judge Judy answered, because your testimony suggests she's always been unreliable. Your own lease renewals suggest the opposite. A murmur spread through the gallery. Karen's attorney quietly rubbed his forehead. He could already see the contradiction widening. Before the truth comes out, comment below. What do you think is inside that sealed envelope? Or, if you believe the facts are about to outweigh the excuses, comment * justice. What Judge Judy was about to reveal changed the entire courtroom. Judge Judy allowed the silence to settle once again. Then she reached for the envelope. Karen finally noticed it. Her confident expression disappeared. What is that? She asked. Judge Judy didn't answer. Instead, she carefully broke the seal and removed several documents along with a flash drive. Karen's attorney's face turned pale. Judge, he said cautiously, may I see those documents? You'll see them in a moment. Judge Judy replied. The first document was a printed email. Judge Judy held it up. This email was not submitted by either party. Karen frowned. What email? It came from a third-party property management company that briefly handled your rental accounts. Karen's breathing became noticeably slower. Judge Judy continued. It was voluntarily provided after they received a subpoena requesting tenant communication records. Karen's attorney slowly closed his eyes. He hadn't known. The judge placed the email beside Emily's payment records. Then she lifted the second document. This is an internal maintenance request. Karen's fingers tightened around the edge of the defense table. No, she whispered almost involuntarily. Judge Judy heard it. So you recognize it? Karen immediately corrected herself. I don't know what that is. Judge Judy didn't challenge the answer. Not yet. Instead, she picked up the flash drive. The court has also received archived security footage from the apartment complex, covering the week Ms. Carter was removed from the property. The gallery erupted into quiet whispers before the bailiff called for order. Emily looked stunned. She hadn't expected video evidence. Karen's attorney slowly leaned toward his client. What exactly didn't you tell me? Karen didn't answer. For the first time since entering the courtroom, she wasn't looking at Emily. She wasn't looking at Judge Judy. She was staring at the flash drive, as if she already knew what it contained. Judge Judy noticed bodies confess before mouths do. She handed the flash drive to the court technician. Let's put this on the monitor. The lights dimmed. Every eye in the courtroom turned toward the screen. Karen's confidence had vanished. And before a single frame of the video appeared, Judge Judy already knew the case was no longer about unpaid rent. It was about something Karen had desperately hoped no one would ever see. The courtroom lights dimmed as the monitor flickered to life. No one spoke, not Emily, not Karen, not even Judge Judy. Sometimes the loudest evidence arrives without a single word. The first video showed the hallway outside Emily Carter's apartment on the morning of the eviction. A timestamp glowed in the corner of the screen. Emily could be seen carefully loading 2 small suitcases onto a borrowed cart. Beside her walked 6-year-old Lily, clutching the same faded backpack now resting on the courtroom table. There was no shouting. No damaged walls, no broken windows, no destruction of property. Only a mother trying to leave with what little she still owned. Judge Judy let the footage continue. Karen shifted uneasily. That's not the whole recording, she said quickly. Judge Judy didn't answer. The video continued. A maintenance worker approached Emily and quietly handed her a folded blanket that had fallen from the cart. Emily thanked him before helping Lily zip up her jacket. The little girl looked back at the apartment one last time. Then she hugged the cracked house key against her chest before placing it inside her backpack. The courtroom remained silent. Judge Judy paused the recording. So much for the claim that Miss Carter destroyed your property, she said. Karen leaned forward. Damage happened after she left. Judge Judy calmly picked up the second document from the envelope. This maintenance report was filed 2 days before Miss Carter vacated the apartment. Karen's attorney's face turned white. Judge Judy continued reading. Water damage caused by an unrepaired pipe behind the kitchen wall. Tenant reported issue multiple times. Repair delayed pending owner approval. She looked directly at Karen. Owner approval. Karen swallowed hard. I don't remember that report. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. No? She handed the document to the bailiff, who delivered it to Karen's attorney. His eyes widened almost immediately. This has your electronic authorization attached, he whispered. Karen stared at the page. For the first time all morning, she had no answer. Experienced judges understand another truth. People rarely panic because evidence exists. They panic because they recognize it. Judge Judy reached for the final document. This email, she said, was written by your former property manager. She began reading aloud. I resigned because I could no longer participate in practices that blamed maintenance failures on financially vulnerable tenants. Miss Emily Carter repeatedly requested repairs. Those requests were ignored after instructions from ownership to prioritize lease enforcement over maintenance costs. Every word landed like a hammer. The gallery gasped. Emily covered her mouth. Tears filled her eyes. But she never looked away from Judge Judy. She wasn't crying because she had won. She was crying because someone had finally spoken the truth she had carried alone. Karen suddenly found her voice. That employee is lying. Judge Judy looked up. Then perhaps you can explain why every repair request includes your approval code. Karen opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Her attorney slowly placed both hands on the table. He no longer looked surprised. He looked defeated. Judge Judy turned back to the monitor. "There is one more clip." The second recording began. It showed Karen speaking with the maintenance supervisor outside the apartment complex just days before Emily's eviction. The audio was clear. Karen's voice filled the courtroom. "Don't fix it yet," she said. "If she can't afford rent, she can live with the leak. She'll leave eventually." The supervisor hesitated. "But her little girl," Karen interrupted. "That's not my concern." The video ended. Domicile silence. No whispers, no movement. Even the air inside the courtroom seemed to stop. Karen's confidence disappeared completely. Her shoulders sank. Her face lost its color. She glanced toward her attorney, hoping for rescue. He couldn't even meet her eyes. Judge Judy folded her hands. This case was never about unpaid rent. She looked toward Emily. It was about a landlord who chose pressure over responsibility. Then she turned back to Karen. "And when that strategy failed, you attempted to destroy Miss Carter's reputation to hide your own decisions." Karen whispered almost inaudibly. "I didn't think anyone would ever see that recording." She realized what she had said only after the words escaped. Judge Judy didn't need another confession. She already had one. The courtroom understood it at the exact same moment. Karen hadn't just lost the case. She had exposed herself. Judge Judy closed the folder gently. The verdict was only moments away. Judge Judy closed the folder with deliberate care. The sound echoed through the silent courtroom. Karen Whitmore stared at the bench. Her earlier confidence completely gone. The woman who had walked into court, convinced she controlled the story, now looked as though she wished she could disappear into the floor. Judge Judy folded her hands. "For several hours," she began calmly, "I've listened to testimony about unpaid rent, but after reviewing the evidence, it's clear this case was never about a tenant refusing to meet her obligations." She paused. It was about a landlord refusing to meet hers. No one moved. Judge Judy continued. "Miss Carter informed you about the maintenance problem. She documented it. She asked for help. She proposed payment arrangements after suffering an extraordinary family hardship. Instead of responding responsibly, you ignored the repairs, rejected every reasonable attempt to resolve the situation, and then spread statements that damaged her reputation." Karen lowered her head. Judge Judy looked directly at her. "You didn't just evict a tenant. You tried to make sure no one else would ever trust her again." The words landed with more force than a shout ever could. Karen's attorney slowly stood. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges that serious mistakes were made." Karen looked toward him in disbelief. He continued anyway. "Given the evidence presented today, we are withdrawing every allegation that Miss Carter intentionally damaged the property." The gallery released a collective breath. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, not in relief, in disbelief. For months, she had been forced to defend herself against accusations that had followed her from apartment to apartment, interview to interview, shelter to shelter. Now those accusations were falling apart one sentence at a time. Judge Judy nodded. "The court accepts your withdrawal." Then she turned back to Karen, but withdrawing a lie does not erase the damage it caused. She reviewed the financial records one final time. The court awards Ms. Emily Carter compensation for her security deposit, moving expenses, lost wages directly resulting from the false statements made to her employer, and additional damages for the documented harm caused by your knowingly misleading representations. Karen's shoulders dropped. Judge Judy continued. "The total judgment is awarded in favor of the plaintiff." The bailiff announced the decision. No applause followed. Real justice rarely needs applause. It only needs truth. Judge Judy wasn't finished. She looked at Karen one final time. Then she delivered the sentence that everyone in the courtroom would remember long after the case was over. "Character is measured by how you treat struggling people when you hold every advantage over them." Asterisk. The courtroom remained completely silent. Karen's eyes filled with tears, but no one mistook them for the tears of someone wronged. They were the tears of someone who had finally run out of excuses. Emily didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She quietly reached for Lily's faded backpack and carefully placed the child's drawing back inside. Judge Judy noticed. She understood exactly what that gesture meant. Emily hadn't come to court hoping to embarrass Karen. She had come hoping her daughter would one day know that the things said about her mother weren't true. As Emily turned to leave, Judge Judy called her name. Carter. Emily stopped. Judge Judy's voice softened. I hope the next place you and your daughter call home is filled with people who deserve your trust. Emily nodded silently. Thank you, Judge. It was the only thing she could say. Within 24 hours, the property management company that had provided the documents announced an internal review of several past tenant complaints. Within 48 hours, Karen's remaining business partners quietly began distancing themselves from her. Within 72 hours, multiple former tenants came forward with records showing similar patterns of ignored maintenance requests and intimidation. The courtroom case had given them something they never expected: the courage to speak. But for Emily, the greatest victory happened far away from cameras. A week later, Lily drew another picture. This time, the little apartment had sunlight shining through the windows. The little girl was smiling. And above the drawing, she had written 5 simple words. Mom, we found our home. That drawing stayed in Emily's folder beside the old cracked house key, not because it proved anything in court, but because it reminded her that dignity can be taken for a while, never forever. As people slowly left the courtroom that afternoon, the backpack remained the image everyone remembered, not the expensive lawsuit. Not the legal arguments, just a worn backpack carrying a child's hope. Sometimes justice isn't about winning money. Sometimes it's about restoring a name. Because truth doesn't always arrive with flashing lights or dramatic speeches. Sometimes it arrives inside a sealed envelope and leaves inside a little girl's backpack. If this story reminded you that truth still matters, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more unforgettable courtroom stories, and share it with someone who believes kindness should never be mistaken for weakness. And tell us in the comments, what moment in this courtroom touched you the most?